Yes, thank you very much. I hope I can be heard properly. Okay, so first of all, thank you so much for the invitation. It's really an honor to be able to, first of all, experience all those incredible contributions to strengthening democracy and also human rights that we definitely have already experienced here, and I hope we will also experience. Look, I realize that as a political scientist, well, since I'm a political scientist, you might expect from me that now I will make, a snow of charts and statistical data. But, I think that in particular, for the last few days, it's the stories that matter the most. And therefore, I would like to tell you a story instead. Once upon a time, there was a politician who used lies, manipulation, empty promises, and sometimes pressure to gain power in his country in democratic conditions. He finally gained it. A big part of the people didn't manage to resist manipulation and lies. They actually hadn't expected them, as it was democracy. At some point, he decided that power and money were the most important things to him. It's so human, isn't it? And respect for the safety, freedom, and dreams of the people of his country, of the country he ruled, was not only less important, but could also hinder his chance to be re-elected. In order to prevent the citizens of his country from unmasking his priorities, for the realization of which he needed money, of course, and gullibility of the citizens, he decided to take over the state media, to stuff the state-owned companies with people fully dependent on him. Through these companies, to take control over independent media. Through dependent journalists of hitherto independent private media and publicists, some simply bad, the others simply stupid, some of them also greedy, to change the meanings of words. For example, abortion equals, in the new dictionary, killing, homosexualism, deviation, and so on and so forth. He decided to manipulate facts. He decided to depreciate all those who criticized politicians and people dependent on them. He decided to justify his own embezzlement and groundlessly accuse others of it. He decided to depreciate elites, scholars, professionals who did not believe this propaganda. The politician then subordinated the courts to himself and stuffed them with people dependent on him, whom he corrupted or promised profiteers. He removed the professional judges of tribunals and courts who wanted to remain independent and able to hold the politician accountable for his illegal actions. Since there was no one left in the media to tell the public that the politician was abusing his power, the public did not notice. It actually wasn't interested. In the same media, the politician and people dependent on him, or even useful idiots, because a majority of them just do that for free, created a narrative that there are groups in the society that should be discriminated against for various reasons. Because they are homosexuals, because they are women, because they are representatives of the opposition, because they are NGOs activists, because they are local government officials who are disliked by the authorities, because they are refugees and immigrants. All this pointing out that each of these groups is unnecessary or poses a threat to the family, to the faith, to children, to order. This allowed the politician to keep in fear people who drew their attention their knowledge about the world, drew it only from the media. And it allowed him to embezzle public funds with impunity and without public scrutiny. Over time, the politician began to restrict the freedoms of the citizens, explaining it as reasons of safety and security of the state. The citizens noticed, but didn't really know how to oppose it. They also kept hearing and reading in the media that it was justified. At best, they have become indifferent. At worst, well, they believed what the politician was pushing into their heads. Do you recognize the story? Because it sounds familiar, doesn't it? That's the story of Hungary, that's the story of Turkey, that's the story of Poland, and surprise, surprise, that's the story of Russia, the early Russia. Interestingly, this kind of a politician usually finds support from similar ones. The friendship of Orban and Putin, or Salvini and Le Pen and Putin, are an evidence here. It's just that Orban is already ruling, and Salvini or Le Pen, they would like to. Hopefully they will never rule. The above story is a story about a populist becoming an autocrat. You know, we sometimes consider populists really not that dangerous. I mean, they are just populists. They tell us what we want to hear. But in fact, populists create alternative reality that they want people to believe in. They want to believe this is the real reality. So the politician, like that, wants people to believe that they want what he tells them to want, and that they hate what he tells them to hate. That's why the free media, the independent courts, the civic society, the active and having sufficient tools opposition are so important to avoid the above scenario. You do not like the opposition for its weak voice in your country, for speaking about complexity of matters instead of giving ready and strong solutions. Love them instead. They really do deserve it, even if they name things their real names, and even if it seems to be rather weak and far from being the radical solution to everything. The opposition is really important. You know what is also necessary? Institutions, mechanisms, public administration, professional officials. Don't listen to those who claim that bureaucracy, that institutions are bad. Marco Cappato spoke about reforming the institutions. Absolutely. Institutions should consult the citizens, but they should be safe from political pressures. And they actually should be also safe from broad criticism. They are to strengthen institutional memory, standards of reacting in difficult situations, foreseeability of relations of the society and the government. Be suspicious about anyone who tells you there is too much Brussels bureaucracy. We need to bring the EU back to its member states' government. Seriously, you would like to bring the Brussels back to Polish government or Hungarian government? This means they want to make the EU citizens weaker and their own power stronger, those who state that. Imagine that there is no Court of Justice of the European Union, no European Court of Human Rights. Where would we go to defend ourselves from misuse of power by the autocratic politicians within the EU, within the Council of Europe? Now listen to the next part of the story, because this story has the next part. One day, this politician, confident that the majority of the public believed his media propaganda, decided to realize his sick vision of invading a neighboring democratic country to conquer it in the name of a nonsense he was feeding himself and his public with. Humans obsessed by the thought that they are powerful and they can do literally everything aren't too humble and understanding for other people's harm and injustice, in particular if they cause them. Since the country did not give up easily, the politician decided to kill civilians and sacrifice any number of his own soldiers in the name of his sick vision. Sounds familiar, right? This is what populists may become while growing in power, undisturbed. So what that there were elections in Russia? Elections are not enough for democracy, for freedom, for human rights. I know it all sounds harsh, but it is the truth in the case of Russia. In a great book, How Democracies Die, you may read that democracies usually die in silence. Bombs usually come later. Democracy is the rule of the majority. But the populist and autocratic rulers, they may make the majority believe that it wants war, poverty, isolation. Look at Russians today. Liberal democracy is a set of values and conditions, legal, institutional, related to civic activities, which prevent populists from becoming autocrats. Liberal democracy also works between the elections. It bases upon the rule of law and protection of all human rights, all standards of behavior of those who have power towards those who gave them this power. Liberal democracy is about understanding that today we govern, but tomorrow we may be the opposition. Liberal democracy is therefore sustainable since it creates foreseeable conditions for citizens. It is inclusive. It is based upon a strong civic society, as it is the source of information about the citizens' needs, a satisfaction of which makes them vote for those who govern, again, or do not vote for them. Liberal democracy, finally, makes the state a good partner of international alliances, as it makes it reliable, predictable, and, well, shows solidarity. That's why the EU needs liberal democratic Poland to trust it. Law and Justice, actually the United Right government, has done a lot to destroy liberal democracy in Poland and to destroy predictability of our state as a partner, which is particularly important today. The EU has long ago proposed energy transformation that the Polish government's short-sighted perspective ignored for political gains. Sure, we weren't the only ones. We perfectly well know that. But still, it was the case. In the situation today, we see how it actually undermined our credibility, but still the EU institutions and other states reacted with big solidarity despite that, regarding the crisis in Ukraine, well, the war in Ukraine, atrocity in Ukraine. Of course, we do not count Viktor Orban's autocratic government. You know why it actually happened? Well, because of a strong civic society in Poland, strong citizens' will to help Ukrainian refugees, to contribute to the European family of societies in solidarity. That's really not the hard work of our government. The EU needs to stand for Ukraine to join the family of liberal democratic members of the EU, as this is what the Ukrainian society wants. This is the capital we mustn't waste. In 2020, nearly 1.5 million people took the streets of Polish cities after an illegal constitutional court of Poland announced its ruling on an actual total ban on abortion. 1.5 million. It did not change the ruling. Well, we are far from liberal democracy, but it showed that Poles know how to protest against an inhuman law that violates elementary human rights and deprives a large part of the society of the freedom to decide about their own lives. The protests were largest in Warsaw, although there were also protests in many Polish towns and villages. There were also protests against a ruling of the same illegal constitutional court challenging the supremacy of the EU law. Yes, there were protests. Yesterday, the same illegal constitutional court decided that provisions of the European Convention of Human Rights are not in line with the Polish constitution. This ruling, again, hits the people as it deprives them of protection against abuses of power. And all this in the shadow of the war next to us. Public pressure caused that the president of Poland, totally dependent on the politician in question, didn't sign the law liquidating independent Polish television, TVN24 and TVN as such. A few days ago, he did not sign a law on the organization of the Polish schools. the pressure makes sense. And Warsaw and the Polish society is exerting pressure. Warsaw has the courage, through the mouth of its citizens, to demand respect for citizens' rights, for citizens' values. Also, Polish citizens now have been organizing incredible help to Ukrainians fleeing to Poland to escape Russian atrocity in their country. The politicians of the governing party try to take credit for helping the refugees, but the society sees that. It is too large a fake not to notice that. They see it thanks to the civic society, thanks to will of the people to really help, not just fuel the political ambitions of populists. Public scrutiny and publications on social media have shown that the Polish government tried to include impunity of the governing party into the law related to national security, and they succeeded in that, as it seems. So public pressure made it public, but it didn't work out regarding the final result. However, it may appear that it strongly contributed to the loss of law and justice in the forthcoming elections. Well, we will see, but hopefully it will be the case. Therefore, although I can clearly see that the security issues will consolidate the public support for law and justice, as a political scientist, unfortunately, I have to state that, the support will not be as big as the governing populist party would expect. As for now, it's about 2-3 percentage points. I am sure, and speaking of the populist party in Poland, yes, it's the most populist, according to The Economist, it's the most populist legal party in the world at the moment, Law and Justice in Poland. I am sure that this Congress will contribute to strengthening the importance of civic society resistance against those who may destroy liberal democracy or have made effort to do so. I am also sure that Warsaw has become a capital of European civic society resistance against such efforts. I am now also participating here in putting pressure on Polish government by saying, do not think we, the citizens, the scientists, do not know what you want and might do. We will never give up in checking what you do, requesting the EU to make you stick to the rules and values we share as citizens, informing the Polish citizens about any of your wrongdoings. And we will tell the world during the Congress today, and congresses like this, that you are responsible, that populists are indeed responsible. Because you are. Thank you.